and welcome to Blue Jays. Today we're your boys. We always got something to say about the Toronto Blue Jays. Today we're going to be looking at Vladimir Guerrero Jr., talking about his arbitration. It's been pretty quiet. Ben Nicholson-Smith did come out with something, but honestly, like, everyone is kind of in the dark right now, so we're going to give our 2 cents right there. Is it a reason to worry, or is it just par for the course? And then Pecota. They came out with their projections for the entire MLB just yesterday. Some of it I like, some of it I agree with, some of it is freaking blasphemous, and I think it's going to spark some very interesting conversations. So, folks, let us know your thoughts about this all in the comments down below. Hit the like, smash the subscribe button. I'm your host, Nicholas Playlog.
I'm your host, Don Peddle. That's exactly right. That's what we're going to talk about. But first, we'll start with the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. stuff. If you guys have been following us on Twitter, we've been kind of keeping track of the whole Vladimir Guerrero Jr. arbitration. A lot of people have been talking about it. A lot of people are trying to wonder who won. Was it Vladdy? Was it the Blue Jays? Well, we actually don't even know yet. And for those who don't know, just need a little bit of a refresher, Vladdy, his arbitration, he wanted $19.9 million. And then the Toronto Blue Jays, they filed for $18.05. So that's a big difference. That's one of the bigger differences we've seen in Blue Jays history. So they're going to arbitration, and they didn't reach some sort of agreement like we said in our last podcast. So now they got to go and plead their cases to these arbitrators, and they got to come up with a decision on which side are they going to go with, because clearly they didn't go with that whole 2-year deal like we thought they would. Instead, they're getting to a little bit of the thick of it, trying to be a little bit of trying to be respectful, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But they're trying to prove why the other side should get that dollar.
Well, I do want to put out there, because John Morosi was actually talking about this on MLB Network today. It is still possible that they could come up with some type of quote-unquote extension or buyout or something. Like, that's still on the table. Yep. You know, like, if they get into these conversations and it's like, like this, you know, like, we are really straining the relationship right now, because that's always the worry with arbitration, right? Like, it doesn't really matter about the money. I mean, at the end of the day, if you have to pay an additional $1.5 million or whatever it is, fine, you're gonna do it. It's Vladimir Guerrero Jr. The big issue with this, and the reason why people get really on about the arbitration, is just because of the whole process and how it is just dumb as nails, and it's basically pitting the entire team against your player, and you never want to do that, right? So I could 100% still see a reality where the Toronto Blue Jays, and this was what John Morosi was, where they get into this room, they start talking, and then they go, okay, you know what? We're going to do what we did with Boba Shett. We're going to do what we did with Josh Donaldson. We're going to buy you out for the next 2 years. Lock it in. That's going to be your dollar amount. We don't have to do this again.
Yeah, because I really do wonder what their negotiation is. I'm not, I was listening to actually At the Letters, and Ben Nicholson-Smith was talking about it, the whole arbitration process. And, I think the Blue Jays might have a different approach about the way they go about their arbitration. Like, speak more specifically, Ross Atkins and who they put in the room with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Because, like we've seen before, Donaldson comes out with a deal when he played for the Blue Jays. Boba Shett comes out with a deal when he played, well, obviously last year. And then you have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Like, I wonder if they're negotiating an equal side, and rather than trying to be like, we're kind of trying to prove against why you don't deserve this kind of money. And again, I'm hoping that they're all kind of professional about it. It's just part of the business, right? No one's really taking personal shots at you as a player, but more of, hey, this is just part of the business. And I hope Vladdy's team and their side kind of knows too, like, this is just part of the process. You're a professional player. You've been around the game a long time, Vladdy. Your dad's been around the game. This is all kind of just part of the process.
Dude, I think everybody knows that it's just like a shit process, right? And it's going to be one of those things where we're going to do our best to be as civil as possible. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to have to argue for myself, saying the team's going to have to argue for themselves and for, spending the amount of money that they want to spend. But at the end of the day, I feel like everybody's aware that, like, this sucks. Let's just get through it and try to be okay with it at the end of the day. Hey. Shout out to Michael Goodrich for the membership right there. Come on. These kids is greedy. Well, I will say this. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., in the worst possible case scenario, is going to end up with $18 million. And, I mean, that is a pretty damn good place to be, man. So I'm very jealous of Vladdy right now. I feel like $18 million, that's kind of nice.
Listen, and I hear where you're coming from. I mean, my mom always talks about, shout out to my mom. She's always like, oh, why does this guy have to make so much money? All they do is this. And it's like, I work my butt off, and, like, I should be making $18 million. But it's like, if you are fortunate enough to be in a position to get a couple more $1 million,
right?
You never know where that can go to in Vladdy's life, his family, you never know. So it's like, if you are in the position to get a couple more $1 million, fight for it.
Obviously. No, I'm not saying don't go fight for yourself. And let's face it, folks, in 2021, for the production that he did, he was criminally underpaid, right? So it's almost like you're making up for the fact that, like, hey, like, you did not make any money back then.
Right.
In baseball
In
terms,
baseball,
obviously.
in baseball.
Right, but I mean, for what you did in 2021, you deserve a hell of a lot of money. We're kind of fitting the bill right now. Let's go over to what it was that Ben Nicholson-Smith actually had to say. He did come out and said that there is no exact timeline for when arbitration decisions leak publicly, but based on previous cases, it wouldn't be a surprise if we learned more on Vladimir Guerrero Jr. within a couple hours. This was revealed a couple hours ago. Nothing's come out, so that kind of sucks. Literally at 11:26, we're filming this at 7 right now, so probably nothing else coming out today, folks. You never know, but but probably not. He filed for $19.9 million with the Jays. They're at 18.05. Panel of 3 arbitrators chooses the winner. So hopefully we hear something soon within the next couple days, dude. Is there any reason to worry, do you think, that like we haven't heard anything at all yet?
Before I give my answer, real quick shout out to Battlegrounds, guys. If you guys are going on a Valentine's Day date, go check out Battlegrounds at battlegrounds.com. No, I feel like it's still part of the process, and this could take like a few days. Like maybe they're kind of keeping things hush hush right now. They aren't really leaking anything in the public. I wouldn't really worry too much or read into it too much, to be honest.
Until we hear something from Vladdy's camp, like when Vladdy comes out and says like, oh, I'm real pissed off right now, or the Jays come out and say like, we're getting nowhere, I really don't think that there's any cause for concern here. It is obviously like, it's frustrating as a Blue Jays fan because for somebody who loves looking at contracts, for somebody who loves looking at all the money and like, okay, how much money are we going to have left? What is the salary cap looking like? Are they going to be spending taxes, right? Like, I want to know what my dude is getting paid. I want to know what the payroll is going to look like, but it may require a few more days for sure. Yeah,
and it's going to be all settled, guys. I wouldn't be shocked if this thing is settled within, like, literally tomorrow morning if we hear, like, something come out like, oh, well, they've settled it. Vladdy is getting 19.9 or whatever. Do you have any projections on who do you think is going to win? Some people were saying it's clearly going to be Vladdy. Like, again, shout out letters. They said Vladdy's going to win it. He's most likely going to win it. Then I saw some other people saying, well, clearly it's got to be the Blue Jays. Where are you kind of lying right now?
Well, typically they like to side with the player. I mean, typically these arbitrators like to go with the player. I think to answer that question, though, we have to kind of establish what are the strong arguments here from both sides. Because if I'm the Toronto Blue Jays, I got a few. Defense is one of them. I mean, I know that you want to go glove, but last year what was going on, right?
Exactly.
What was happening last year?
And it's a year-to-year thing, right? You renegotiate.
We're renegotiating right now. You know, we paid you for the defense last year. We're not seeing it this past year, right? So what's going on there? I think that the grounding into double plays thing, I made a little skit today, just kind of like having fun, poking fun at like what Guerrero is going to have to deal with. I think grounding into double plays, that is obviously going to be a factor. I mean, like that's just something that goes down. So I feel like those are two of the bigger arguments that if you're the Toronto Blue Jays, that's what you're going to use. You know, you're going to say like this is what's going on. But from Guerrero's side of things, a lot of RBIs last year, man.
Yeah, I mean, he puts up numbers. I mean, obviously, where he was kind of leading, right, in terms of his arbitration dollar amounts, because right now he's on arbitration 3, he has an arbitration 4 next year. Where he was kind of going based off of that MVP kind of year in 2021, where then he began his arbitration, he was going on Juan Soto kind of levels, if not greater, right? So you're seeing a little bit of a halting of the momentum, right? Because I think last year he had $14.5 million, if I'm not mistaken. So they're trying to go, okay, you've only earned about $3.5 million more, basically,
from last year.
And it's got to slow down. We got to slow down the momentum a little bit. Where, you know, I think Vladdy has some sort of arguments for the $19.9 million. I think it's reasonable to go up to there. I don't think he's ever going to reach that $30 million or $33 million that Juan Soto got.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. He's never going to reach that kind of money unless he puts up some sort of ungodly year, a godly year next year. Yeah, I don't know. I really do think the Blue Jays are going to win this one, man.
You think Jays are going to walk away with
I do think the Jays. I do think the Jays are going to win this one. Yeah, you got a lot of arguments, man. You do got a lot of arguments on where he's kind of leading towards. Arbitration's all about the guy growing and getting better and getting paid for it, whereas he's kind of going in the opposite direction of where his arbitration began. So I just based off that, for me, and there's so many more factors, obviously, but me, that's kind of the one that sticks out the most.
Well, this is something that I don't know. So if anybody knows this, please comment in the chat. But do they factor in the state of the team at all? Like, is that something that they talk about? Because if I was Vladimir Guerrero Jr., another argument that I might have is, I'm kind of the guy here, you know, like I am gonna be batting third. I'm gonna be driving in probably majority of the runs.
Yeah.
I was just on the cover of MLB The Show,
Well,
so I'm gonna be bringing eyeballs now.
You got a good point here because Shai Davidi just came out with this tweet. A little bit of breaking news right now. We're just talking about it. Shai Davidi saying arbitrators rule in favor of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Per source, he will earn $19.9 million from the Blue Jays this season. So they did end up going with the side of Vladdy.
I would hate to be you right now, man.
Why? I still think that the Blue Jays should have won it. I still do think because I mean, just based on where he's going. But you're right. They do tend to favor the player more than the team.
Yeah, man. Look, dude. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., I don't even know if I said it right there, but I was going to be siding with Guerrero on this one. I'm happy that my dude got paid. I feel like this is the guy for the Jays. This is the Toronto Blue Jays player. And I feel like that is ultimately going to be the biggest argument is, hey, I am the Blue Jays. If we go to the playoffs, it's going to be because of Vladdy. It's going to be because that dude is putting up, over 100 RBIs and popping off. Like that's what he brings to this team. That's what he means. And your franchise your franchise player, I think that guy deserves $20 million or more dollars.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I think he, based on what he's playing in his last arbitration year, which would be next year, would be about a $20 million player. 2024 maybe, right? Like, I think that's kind of where he's heading. So, and that's why I was kind of leaning towards the Blue Jays, where it's like, okay, well, based on where you're going and what you're playing right now, by the end of your arbitration, you will end up at that final number, just based on what other players are doing around the league. Like, for example, like Pete Alonso, Pete Alonso put up some pretty good numbers last year in terms of the OPS, just looking at the OPS numbers. And he got paid in his final year around $20 million.
20 and a half, says Davey Boy. Actually,
20 and a half.
Just said that.
Boom,
right
there you go,
yeah.
20 and a half, right? So it's like, okay, well, if Vladdy did less, but he's getting paid almost that exact same amount, then like, you know what I mean? So that's another kind of reason I was like kind of shocked. But hey, look, the deal's done. So obviously, whatever they presented wasn't strong enough to convince the arbitrators that, dang, this guy deserves less money. So maybe they were okay with giving up an extra maybe $2 million roughly extra, right? So
I'm happy that Guerrero got what he wanted because I want to keep Guerrero happy. I am upset at the fact though that like this means that there's no extension or there's no buyout or there's no anything. Like I was very happy when they did what they did with Bo Bichette because it's like you lock them down. They never have to have this conversation again, right? And I feel like that's just not a conversation that you want to have because now they're going to have to do it unless they get an extension done in the midseason. But that's just not a conversation that you want to have with your player when you're a year away from free agency. Because if you end up having to go to the arbitration again next year, let's just say that happens. Yeah. You go to the arbitration again. Vladdy wants a lot of money, probably because he will. In arbitration 4, he's going to want a hell of a lot of money. They go there. You leave on bad terms. Well, now there's only 1 year between you and potentially going to free agency. And I was kind of hoping that they did not have to do that. At the end of the day, it's good that he got his money and he won this thing, so that'll keep him happy. But just something to note for next offseason.
Yeah, well, speaking of that whole extension conversation, I mean, I feel like the way everything's going, because they're not really giving him any extension, right? Or extension, quote unquote. Just someone said a buyout. I love that term a lot better, but extension is the technical term. Because they're not doing that, I wonder, like, are they gonna let Vladdy hit free agency? Are they gonna let Bo hit free agency? The way that everything's looking, like, take all your bias and wishful thinking aside, and just look at where they're kind of leading these two boys with their contracts. It feels like they're both kind of destined for the free agent market at this point. Man.
I disagree, dude. I'm sorry.
You disagree?
You're jumping the gun. You're jumping the gun because it's all about this season. It's all about this season.
Right.
For me, it's like they're leaving the door open. They're leaving that option open to potentially let them do that. But it's all about this season. So if Guerrero comes out and looks amazing like 2021, he's not hitting free agency.
You think they'll get him the 300, 350?
100%. Same other thing with Bo Bichette. If one of them looks so clearly more like the guy than the other guy, he's not going to free agency.
Okay.
He gets the extension.
Honestly, what's convincing me is just the way they've handled it. Like, I've looked around baseball and you see how other teams handle their young guys. We're kind of letting them slip a little bit, like right to the last minute. Like, does that not give you any kind of fear a little bit?
Well, I think that you gotta treat them right because you're leaving the door open for them to then make the choice of going to free agency. And that's something that a lot of these other teams, like what the Kansas City Royals just did with Bobby Witt Jr., they said, you know what, we don't even want to screw around.
We're just gonna get him. We're gonna lock him down forever. So
I think that the Toronto Blue Jays are getting a little bit risky with that, but I think that they want to see them fully solidify themselves as the guy. And I think that Guerrero, just on the trajectory of his entire career, have an incredible 2021 and then kind of slowing down, it's hard to give that guy 300. And Bo Bichette, I mean, you could, but I feel like they want to see this team succeed this year and know which one of them is the guy, and then they're going to offer the $300 million. And hopefully, because I do think both of these guys enjoy Toronto, hopefully they will accept that.
And that's my worry, is like we don't really know where they're kind of thinking, where their agent's thinking right now. Because if they're 1 year away from hitting free agency and they just put up a monster year, they might go, don't touch that money right now from the Toronto Blue Jays.
You can't disrespect them though. That's why, like, if Guerrero puts up a crazy year or Bo Bichette puts up a crazy year, it is going to be 300 plus. And there can't be any disrespect involved in that. Like, you just need to understand that if you're the Toronto Blue Jays, we have to pay the free agent price from what he would be on free agency, but we just need to pay it a year earlier.
Here's a fun thought. Speaking of extensions and money and big dollars, what if not signing Shohei Ohtani was actually kind of a benefit for the Blue Jays? Let's say they do. Let's play a hypothetical right here. Let's say they do put up an incredible year. One of Bo, one of Vlad, and you're like, okay, this is the guy we're signing for $300 million. What if the Blue Jays know in the back of their mind that they had all that money to spend on potentially Ohtani, they didn't, now they're not really going out and spending this offseason to save up for a big splash on one of those guys?
I mean, I think that's still in your back pocket, right? And I think that is one of those things that has stopped them from pulling the trigger on a Cody Bellinger, because it's one thing to go out and get a Shohei Ohtani and pay that guy $700 million. But if you get Cody Bellinger, then you're probably not going to get Bo Bichette. You're probably not going to get Vladimir Guerrero Jr., which is kind of the cornerstone of your entire franchise. So I think that if they were okay with sacrificing one or both of those guys by getting Shohei Ohtani, but now that guy is off the table and there is no Juan Soto, we are going to go out and we're going to get the Justin Turners and just plan to maybe extend one of them next year.
Because you're right, where they need to put up the money on the table. They can't F around, right? They can't F around, right? Because they're going to smell, like I said, like they're going to smell the free agency and what they're hoping to get. If you got to present right away. You got to present it right away.
I think that, again, it really does boil down to what the guys are going to do. Because if, for instance, if Guerrero comes out and Guerrero puts up like an 840 OPS with 30 home runs, now you're wondering, do I pay him 300? Do I not? And now if you're the Blue Jays, you start to go, we're going to offer, but we're not going to offer maybe as much as he wants.
That's right.
And that is the situation where maybe he goes to free agency.
Exactly.
But if he comes out and he puts up a 900 OPS with 37, 38, 40 home runs,
Jesus.
Now you give him 300. You feel so fucking good about it. He's locked in for forever, and that's your guy. So I think that they really are just waiting and seeing, like, what type of player is this guy? Is he a $200 million guy? Is he a $300 million guy? Do we want him to be our player for the next decade?
See, in more ways than one, next season is going to mean so much. It means a lot for Vladdy. It means a lot for Bo. It means a lot for the Toronto Blue Jays organization and where they take their next offseason. I mean, y'all may be complaining about this offseason. I know I am. But if things go wrong this season, next offseason will be very, very scary.
Well, let's take a look at what Pecota is projecting the Toronto Blue Jays season to look like, everybody. They came out with their projections. It is it's kind of blasphemous in my opinion. I think it's a little ridiculous, folks. Let's flash over here. Taking a look at the American League East, everybody. New York Yankees, 94.5 wins. Toronto, 88.1 wins. Baltimore, 86.8 wins. Tampa Bay, 86.3 wins. And Boston, 79.8 wins. Thoughts on the AL East?
Well, just to kick this off, for those who are unfamiliar with Pecota kind of takes like player projections, right? And then they obviously put them in their team day one roster, and they kind of simulate out an entire season multiple times. So this is kind of just the medium of what we've seen in their kind of simulations. So AL East, these projections, this kind of caught me off guard, because if you don't look at the win total, you look at where they fall in terms of rankings. New York 1, Toronto 2. After a year where you just had Baltimore and Tampa Bay running 1 and 2, you see them falling to 3 and 4, and then Boston. I mean, sorry, Boston, you're still in 5th. I mean, I probably agree with that the most right here in a very competitive AL East. I mean, I'm not too surprised about. Let's start with Toronto. I'm not too surprised about the win projection at 88, because we've been talking a lot about we have to have guys kind of bounce back. We still have a very good pitching staff. Some guys are going to regress. Some guys are going to progress. And where we kind of see them is potentially around that 88 mark, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I completely agree with just that Toronto line. What are your kind of thoughts on them projecting the Blue Jays?
I think out of the entire AL East, my favorite line is Toronto.
Yeah,
I think
agree.
that they actually kind of nailed it. Like, I hate to say that, but I think that they actually kind of did, right?
Yeah.
Like 88.1 wins feels like right around that line based on what it was that the Toronto Blue Jays did this offseason, how they finished last year, just the general hype and the feeling of the team walking into this. It's the other guys. It's the Yankees for me. It's the Orioles for me that are just absolutely blasphemous. And I want to continue to talk about that, but I know that we do need to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, folks. So shout out to Betway.
Whoa! Time for your daily Betway breather. A quick reminder that the best place to bet is on Betway. Must be 19 years of age or older to play. In collaboration with iGaming Ontario, please bet responsibly. Now, back to the content.
Shout out to Betway, everybody. They are absolutely phenomenal. And if you were to go on to Betway, and if you were to look at the standings or the projected division winners or everything like that, they would disagree wholeheartedly with Pecota, folks. So that's one of the reasons where we're coming from or giving our opinions. Shout out to Michael Goodrich as well for the $2 dono saying Atkins got to go sign Vladdy 187, 8 years. That is a very specific proposal.
Very specific. I mean, I would love it as a fan. But again, like we said before, you gotta slap the big dollars down if you want to keep Vladdy.
Dude, I think that any deal that starts with 1 for Guerrero,
it's a no.
It's just gonna be a no.
It's a no.
It's just gonna be a no.
He's gotta get at least a 2, depending on what he does, of course.
Yeah,
at least a 2.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Going back to the Pecota standings here, folks, the New York Yankees thing for me, this is blasphemous because when you go over to the division percentage winners, this is where I don't understand. I don't understand it. They are giving them a 60% chance to win the American League East. This is a team that finished 4th last year. This is a squad who could not hit for shit last year, and I understand. They went out and they got Juan Soto, and Aaron Judge is incredible, and some of their young guys are going to be growing up, they're going to be getting better, and their pitching staff looks good, and they got Marcus Stroman, and Carlos Rodon will be healthy, and all of this stuff. There's a lot of hype around this team, but in my opinion, 60% is just way too much with Baltimore and Toronto, and even the Rays and Boston in this division. What do you think?
I mean, we looked at the Vegas line, and it was 40% chance they had to win. Right now, they're saying they have a 60%, so I completely disagree. I would agree if they still had them as the favorites. I do think, like I was kind of telling you before the podcast, you know, you play last season over with a completely healthy, everyone's completely healthy kind of team. You play last season over. Do they end up in 4th place, you know, 10 out of 10 times? Probably not, right? They end up, you never see that happen with the New York Yankees. So I think that, like, that year was an outlier. And if you were to roll the dice again, you get a better, like, outcome. And yes, you add all those great players to the Yankees and they get a little bit more experience. I think that they will have a better season, but not 60%. I do think I would still put them as the favorites for sure, though.
Yeah, I think it's just like all of those numbers right there are a lot of hype. And to jump from, because what were they like? They were 82 wins last year.
Something
to
like
go from that to 95. Because that's a prediction right now. That is a big jump. You know, that's a big leap.
Yeah. But then again, like, where would you have put their team coming into the season last year, right? That's kind of what it's based off of.
Yeah, no,
you know what I mean?
I do. I understand what you're saying. I think the numbers are just too far in the other direction for me. And similarly, Baltimore Orioles. I hate that I have to admit this, everybody, but like that team's nasty, man. That team's nasty.
Pretty young and scary.
And to give them 11.4% chance to win the division after they won 100 games last year. That's crazy. Yeah.
And again, the same kind of thing I'm saying about New York Yankees, right? Like, obviously they have guys who have broken out, like Gunnar Henderson. He's legit. You know, Adley Rutschman's just so legit. Mountcastle kills the Blue Jays, and he faces them 13 times every year. The big question mark is that rotation, and they are missing one of their big guys. I think it's Felix Bautista this season. They did get Craig Kimbrell as a somewhat replacement, and then they go trade for Corbin Burns. So, like, they made some sort of, like, fixes there, but not a whole lot of sway. Like, you need a staff, right? They made a couple little moves. They need a bigger staff. I do think, like, if the Yankees lineup did so bad last year, and if we're saying the Toronto Blue Jays lineup did bad, and we're hoping that they're going to kind of progress a bit and get a little bit better, then you got to say the same thing about the Baltimore Orioles offense, where they're going to regress just a little bit. Even though they're still going to be good, they're going to kind of regress. And then, yeah, you look over the pitch staff, maybe they get a little bit better. You roll the dice again. I don't think it's 86 wins.
No.
I would put them at, like, again, I'm not Pecota, I'm not a calculator, you know what I mean? But, like, if I were to give my kind of projection, I would have been around, like, 91, 92, you know, around a good, hyped-up Blue Jays, maybe even more, maybe 93, you know what I mean?
Well, I'll tell you right now, my standings for the AL East, obviously this is preseason, I'm probably going to get clowned for this, you know, 4 or 5 months later down the line when Boston decides that they're going to be crazy or something crazy happens.
Right.
But I'm saying right now, Baltimore repeats. I'm saying they're number one. They repeat the division. I think that there's just too much to like about that squad. Too much youth. Too much just momentum there. I do think that New York comes second. I got Blue Jays third. I hate to admit that. I got Blue Jays third. That's not to say that we're not in a playoff spot, but I'm saying we're third. And then you go Tampa, and then you go Boston. That's where I'm at right now.
And I'm going to agree with you. Even though I said that New York has the best chances to win, I do still think they do. Here's what's really been leading me towards Baltimore. And actually, I made a little Betway prediction on the World Series winner. Like, I was trying to pick a really good line, a really good, like, odd line. And on Betway, they had Baltimore as under the Blue Jays. Like, we had a better chance to win the World Series, apparently, than the Baltimore Orioles. So I was like, I got to pick them. Why? Because they got new management. What they do right after they got new management? Boom. Corbin Burns, right? They have the best prospect pool in baseball. They already spent it to get Corbin Burns. They still have a really good prospect pool. I could see them coming this trade deadline and buying an elite rotation.
1,000%, dude, because last year was always an evaluation year for them.
Yeah.
They proved it. Now this year, if they're off to a hot start again, you know, they're in first or second in the division looking really good, they are going to fire those bullets.
They have to, because they weren't doing it before, but I think, you know, if there's going to be some sort of new, I'm not saying it's the owners, you know, that they're saying they're pulling all the strings, but if there's some sort of culture change where we're not going to sit on our asses like we did for the last decade, you know, once the Blue Jays knocked us out in 2016, we're going to actually start to compete again, which I think they should, and they should. Where are you going to put all these guys?
Yeah.
Their entire rotation is rookies other than Corbin Burns, right, or second-year players, and John Means coming back. Their entire lineup is young guys, and you have the top prospect, Jackson Holliday, coming up. Like, of course, there's no more guys left. Start spending them for the big names, man.
I couldn't agree more, dude. Shout out to Tom Dinder saying, come on, guys, gals, only 180 people in here and only 41 likes. Guys, if you haven't already done so, please hit the like button. Smash the subscribe button, everybody. This is your place to be for Toronto Blue Jays content, MLB content. Also, join our Discord. I put the link right up there. It is pinned, so if you guys just want to talk ball with us, we're going to be doing some more stuff in there. Just exclusive opportunities to talk some ball privately with us and other people. Join it. Let's talk a little bit about some other blasphemous things across the MLB in general. One of the ones that stuck out to me, Texas down there.
Yeah.
86.7 wins for the World Series champs.
Yeah, it definitely feels a little bit weird to see them down there. I mean, they haven't really done much this offseason, but just reinforced their team, and they still kind of rolling out their guys. But to have them down at 86 is blasphemous. I'd put them right around Houston Astros, like maybe just under them. I can't ever like underrate the Houston Astros.
No,
like,
they've just been,
because that's what Pecota is all about. Is we take the guys, what they've done in their careers, in the recent part of their careers, and we project it. And everybody in that Houston Astros team is just fantastic. So maybe that's why they're not projecting the Rangers as high, and same thing with Baltimore Orioles, because they're younger, the Baltimore Orioles I'm speaking of, where they don't project them as high. Rangers, yeah, they have some good veteran players there, like Corey Seager, and they've got Marcus Semien in there, and they got some good, like, elite guys in that rotation. But maybe they're not projecting them as a unit to do better. Maybe they overperformed in terms of projections last year.
Yeah, I hear you, dude. I hear you, but it feels wrong to have the World Series champs.
It does feel wrong.
You know,
what would you put them around? Like, I'm kind of saying like 92, 93. You know, right behind those Astros.
I mean, you always got to factor in that there's a little bit of a hangover after winning those things. That's a real thing. I do think that actually happens. So maybe first month of baseball they go 500, a little bit lower than 500, but then they're gonna come out swinging. Honestly, I'm going to go on the higher end of things. I think Texas is going to win like 94, 95 games this year.
Yeah, very, very doable, right? Another one out in the NL Central that really stuck out to me, if you guys pay attention out there in the NL, St. Louis, they were last. I mean, they sold off everybody at the deadline. Basically, we got Jordan Hicks, right? We got Paul DeYoung. Shout out to Paul DeYoung. Where's that guy? And they're projecting them first. granted, they're projecting a lot of people in this NL Central to be pretty damn weak. They only have them at 85 wins and winning the division. I mean, damn, I wish, man. I wish.
No, 100%, dude. I absolutely hear you. Like, that is just a division that is, like, it's up for the taking. It is 100% up for the taking. The last one for me that was just crazy, and I understand. Once again, they are a phenomenal team. They are probably going to win this thing. I would bet my life that they're going to win that division if I had to. But the Los Angeles Dodgers are at a 96% chance to win the division. I don't think anything's a 96% chance in sports. Literally nothing. Like, I don't think that there is ever an opportunity where somebody is that much better than everybody else that they're going to do it that amount of times, you know? Like, even if you took the Washington, or who's the worst team? Colorado.
Colorado, yeah.
If you took Colorado and you played them against LA 162 times, I still think Colorado wins more than 4% of the time.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So
understand.
it's like, even that right there. So then to say that they're going to beat out Arizona and San Francisco and San Diego, that's just a lot.
Yeah, I mean, like, in that 4% pool, you gotta count for a lot of different outcomes. You gotta count for their rotation getting injured, their lineup getting injured. Like, that's what would have to happen for them to fall down. Maybe a big breakout, even again, furthermore, by Arizona, or San Diego bounces back in a big way. I mean, they've got pieces there, and the rotation's kind of ass, to be honest. But if they can somehow make it work, then, like, they got some sort of pieces there. But, like, in that 4% pool, there's so many different outcomes that could happen, right? I mean, hell, Baltimore in the AL East, they just broke out of nowhere. Granted, they had the number one prospect pool, so, like, that kind of fueled them. But you never know. There's so many outcomes. 96 a lot. Vegas had them at 80.
Yeah.
So, you know, basically Pecota's saying, go bet Dodgers are winning the division.
Yeah.
I bet you're
again, like, this is not me saying that they're not going to do it. I do think that they are going to do it. That just feels like a really high number. Let's finish this thing off by just flashing over to a Ben Nicholson Smith tweet that just came out talking about the Guerrero arbitration, folks. Literally mid-stream, mid-podcast, it was revealed that he did win it, $19.9 million. Ben Nicholson Smith came out and said by winning his arbitration case versus the Blue Jays, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. also sets himself up for a bigger payday in 2025. Vlad Jr.'s 2025 raise will now be added onto the bigger number of $19.9 million. After that, he's slated to hit free agency. My dude, he could be hitting like $26-27 million if he goes crazy this year.
Dude, if he goes crazy, 26-27, he could be touching on that 30 mark if he goes up and does MVP like he did in 2021.
Insane numbers.
Absolutely. And it could very well happen. So, I mean, again, that's why I kind of thought maybe they would have saw it a little bit lower, but yeah.
You know what? Yeah. That actually might be a good thing. If his number starts to get in that range of outcomes, then if I'm the Toronto Blue Jays, that's all the more incentive to lock him down. Yeah, because, like,
sign him to a deal,
dude,
right
like,
there.
if we're gonna pay this guy like $28 million the next year, why don't we just pay him like $25 million, but for like 10 years or something, you know what I mean? Or like, if it's going to be, or $28 million for a long period of time or something like that, you know?
I could realistically see it happening this way. I know they're very different players, Bobby Witt Jr. and Vladimir Guerrero Jr., but I could see if he's going to make, like, if he breaks out big time next year, incentivizes the Blue Jays to go and sign him to some sort of extension or offer him an extension, and his arbitration's looking at like $28 million-ish, I could see them being like, you know what? Here's 30, Vlad. We'll give it to you this year. 30, 30, 30. Because that's what kind of like Bobby Witt was looking like, right? Like, we're just going to give you $30 million, $35 million. Like, that's the kind of deal that would kind of set him up.
That's true. Yeah, I was probably underestimating what it would that he gets paid now doing the math in my head. But, yeah, like, if you start getting to that number, it's like, I mean, what's an extra $2 million to lock our guy down forever, right? It just feels like the right choice at that point. So, honestly, everything is on the table right now for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. If he comes out, he starts looking like he did back 2 years prior, this guy could get 300 or even more from the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, let us know all your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you think Vladdy deserved that $19.9 million? And what do you think about this Pecota Projections? Where do you have the Blue Jays finishing in the AL East in 2024?
Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Please hit the like and subscribe button on your way out. Join our Discord, folks. It's going to be in the description as well as pinned right there, guys. It is a phenomenal place. We want to see all of you guys there.
Guys, thank you so much for watching.
And as always,
go Jays, go!